Further ado, Tom Robinson.
Thank you. Thanks for coming back. I see some familiar faces, so I didn't scare anybody off too bad last week. That's good. So what I'm going to do today is kind of localize this to today. So last week was about 20 years of how we even got here. Today, I'm going to focus on things that I think are good ideas to make yourself secure, whether it be at home or whether it be in a coffee shop or an airport or while traveling. So let's kind of start with the basics. These are the kind of things you're going to see most often in terms of threats that are brought to your device or manifested in a public environment. Phishing is just that. It's an attempt to trick you. We've all seen emails. Your account's been compromised. Please click here, right? How many, everybody's seen those. Well, that's basically, they're just phishing for your credentials. And what they typically have behind that click here is a URL or some other link that will capture whatever you key in, or will capture your credentials, or will place a cookie onto your computer and browse through certain registries on your computer to try and mine that information. That's why you never want to do that. I'll show you an example of one here in a minute. Malware is just that. It's malicious software. Worms, viruses, those kinds of things you've heard about for a long time. Largely, that's manageable with just a good antivirus program. Windows has one built in, Norton, McAfee. There are several of them out there. If you don't have one of those and don't keep it up to date, you're opening yourself up, because I guarantee you there's hackers and programmers on the globe all over the place looking for ways to exploit that. And they can be very sneaky, right? It can be embedded into a receipt. As an example, you order something from an offshore organization and they send you a receipt and they say, click here, or, save with a save button on the bottom of the receipt as an example. Very innocuous presentation. You click on that receipt and guess what happens? It drops a piece of software onto your computer that you don't even know about. And it's just in the background in mines. So very important that you learn to recognize phishing. And I'll show you an example here in a minute. And you learn to make sure you have an antivirus program on your devices and you keep it updated. Now, I don't recommend you have to pay for one. Personally, I use the one built into Windows. It works just fine. If you have auto updates on in Windows, which we all do, probably I do anyway, it's best practice, it'll keep it updated for you. So it'll check every couple of days. And if they've found another piece of malware or another virus out there, they'll inoculate your computer against it. So it's just a simple, easy way to avoid that. Rogue Wi-Fi, what the heck is that? Well, that is you're sitting in Starbucks and you've go to your wireless settings and you see a dozen different log into these networks. Some are open, some are closed. Have a little lock key on them, or they don't have the locks open. Well, bad players, airports are also good for this. Bad players will sit in an airport lounge with their laptop open, with an open SSID or an open network, and invite you to log in. It's free. You're sitting there. You don't want to pay for Wi-Fi. So you say, okay, great. I'll log onto that network. Guess what happens? Same thing happens in the first two situations. They're sitting there. You're logged into their computer. They can remote access into your computer using that wireless network. Once they're remoted into it, guess what? They have control of your computer. So do not ever, 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 ever click on an open network in a public environment. Just asking to be stolen. I mean, it's not, well, it's not hard if you know a little bit about the technology involved. It's not very hard to go under the covers through these kinds of networks and wreak havoc on somebody's computer. Okay, so just don't ever do that. If you're not involved in a network that is locked, Delta Airport Lounge, use their network. You get the password when you walk in. That's secure. Don't look at Tom's phone. Oh, it's not locked. Who's Tom? I don't know who Tom is, but he's got a Wi-Fi. I'll log into that. Guess what Tom's going to do, right? So those are the things you just need to be aware of. And then weak passwords. We're going to go through some password conversations here in a minute. But one of the easiest things to do for people that want to be nefarious is probably a good word, is to just Chest, various passwords. How many have ever used the word password as a password? All right. How many have ever used something like your dog's name or your kid's name or your old address? People can get into those things and they run programs to just guess. So they'll sit there in an airport lounge, get into your Wi-Fi and just guess your passwords. And just sit there and drink a Coke and run passwords. So you just don't want to do that. So these are just, blocking and tackling, things you just want to make sure you're aware of and you're always aware of your environment. So what's a phishing email look like? Well, phishing emails will look pretty much like this up here. No reply at alerts.secure. Makes no sense. You can't relate that back to anybody or anything, right? As opposed to the one on the right, which is notifications from facebookmail.com. Probably know that Facebook is a reputable source unless somebody's somehow doing that. And they will never ask you to verify your account. You might review your login, right? Log in here. We saw something on here that we're not sure about from Facebook. You want to review your login. We want to make sure it's you. If you click into this, you're probably going to get taken to a login screen. Just verify your login. Or they're going to send you an email, which basically has a link in here. This you never want to do. So look for the crazy address and look for them to verify your account. Because what they're really wanting you to do is get online with one of their people and give them your information. And they'll never, a reputable organization will never ask you for an ID, a password, an account number over the phone. Just never do it. Another way I recommend is if you see this, don't do this at all. Go back to your Facebook account, go back to your logins, and make sure that you're logged in to your account through your computer, through the Facebook interface, not through some crazy email. So really, I would recommend you never do this. These will pop up all the time, and these are the red flags. Just don't do it. And keep all your accounts and all your passwords, whether it's banking, Facebook, whatever, keep it in that native application. So when you go to Ford.com, I have a Ford truck. When I want service, I go to Ford.com, I log into my account at Ford, and I schedule a service appointment. They send me emails all the time. Do you want to do that? No. Thank you for the reminder. I'll go over here and take care of that. Oops, wrong way. So back to home networks. Your network probably looks like this. You have the cloud, the internet. You have some piece of hardware given to you by your ISP, Xfinity, Comcast, AT&T, whomever it is. And that connects to a number of devices in your network. And I'm showing wireless devices and I'm showing connected devices. So this is kind of a picture of what your basic home network probably looks like. Okay. Last time we talked about how these IP addresses get assigned and what they mean. This is your network. This is the gateway address, and this is the device on that network. So basically all these devices have a network of one, and this is the 37th address given out on this network. Talk about DHCP, that's what that means, Domain Host Control Protocol. Has an address block, it assigns addresses as devices come on the network, and you see they're not contiguous, 50, 75, 22, 46, because they're taken out of a random pool. Okay, so this is kind of what your network probably looks like. So how do you secure your home environment? This is the sort of Tom's tips and tricks. Not necessarily all applicable, but this is how I look at it. Hide in plain sight. So don't use one address, one email address. Email addresses are a dime a dozen. They're cheap. Google will give them to you all day long, right? Don't use the same one for everything. Talked about this last week. I have one that I use for communicating with my kids and booking hotel rooms and just general email address stuff. I have another one that is only used for banking, financial transactions, things I want to make sure that I'm secure under. And that address is not guessable. So my primary address is terobinson@gmail. Well, if you know me and you know Gmail, you probably figure out who that is, right? The other one's not. And it's a concatenation of numbers that means something to me. It's my initials, my wife's birthday, my birthday, my first son's birthday, my second son's birthday. I always know those numbers, right? I don't use the months, I used to use the dates. So that I look at that and go, okay, that's what that is. Or if my wife needs to look at something on the financial accounts, she can guess that address too. It's not hidden in terms of anybody important. Nobody's going to guess it. And it's also not out there on the internet when I buy something off Amazon or if I, or all those kind of things. Yes, sir.
And I don't want to do that, or I don't know how to change.
Hold,
Where we discuss that in the future.
I can, certainly can. So the question was, he knows how to change passwords, but not necessarily change email addresses. So we'll go through that at the end. We'll hold that question to the end if you don't mind. Okay. Make it, so that's a big, so make it easy to remember, make it decipherable. So if I told my son, hey, my banking is under an email address, which is my initials and the family's birthdays, he'll go first, second, he'll figure it out, right? Even if he doesn't know it, he'll figure it out. And opt out. So when you log into something, especially with this email address, and you don't just bypass and say accept all, right? Read through that license agreement and also look at what they're asking you to opt into. Because a lot of times where this gets publicized is they'll say opt into marketing emails, opt into promotions from Bank of America, opt into these things, erase it all. There's usually a deselect all button, which will take all those check marks off. And what that does is that makes that email address very insular. It's not given to the marketing department. It's not giving to partners. It's not up for promotional activities. It's just your email address to look at your banking or your credit card or your brokerage account, and nobody else needs to know about it. Segment devices. I'm going to give an example of this in a minute. Now we talked about different types of networks. You can have within your control more than one network in your house. I'm going to show you how to do that in a second. So things that you want, like Alexa devices, thermostats, gaming machines, that really don't have any business knowing your business. Let's put it that way, right? Google, raise the temperature 2 degrees. It has no, all I can do is go to the internet, come back and raise your thermostat 2 degrees. It has no idea what's on your network, it has no idea about the rest of your network. So segment these things off. It's not that hard to do. Create guest logins. How many people have come, family comes for Christmas? What's your Wi-Fi password? Boom, it's this. And now you got 10 people on your network, right? With know your Wi-Fi password. And guess what? Your network's exposed. So if you've got something sensitive information on a computer that you don't want anybody else to have, well, you just open the network. And anybody that's any kind of knowledge can go into that network and go, this is all, this is whatever they can find. You don't want them in there. So basically, the metaphor might be, there's things you keep in the garage. There's things you keep in the office, right? And those things are separated by definition, right? Flammable materials stay in the cabinet in the garage. They don't live in the living room couch for reasons. You don't want those things mixing up. So networking is the same way. And then limit access to those things on those networks. File storage. You may have all your financial records. You may have, your cousin's financial records. You may be taking care of somebody, in a caretaker situation. You may have their records. Nobody's business, right? So put those somewhere on another segment of the network where your guests who want to just visit you for Christmas and browse the internet and do Facebook and whatever the heck they're doing, they have no way to get there. Use wired connections where possible. You can't hack a wired network. You can't sniff a Wi-Fi network and get its password if it's plugged into the wall. So, it's very uncommon these days to actually use wired connections because we're all spoiled by Wi-Fi, right? I sit on the couch and I get on the network. Well, that's a great idea for casual browsing and other things. But if you've got some things that you want, one, they're faster. Wired connections are faster. They're more secure. In my house, I've got a dozen wired connections because they're faster for things like TVs for streaming. It's faster for things like my office computer when I'm doing computing or I'm doing processing or I'm building code. That all stuff is all faster and it's also very secure. It used to be the wireless. I only use the wireless in my house for casual devices, right? My TVs, everything I can plug into a wall, it's plugged into a wall. And enable these anti-intrusion things we're going to talk about in a second here. Firewalls are your friend. They're not hard to configure, but they are designed explicitly for keeping people out of your business. So when a firewall is up, does two things. One, it filters the data. So you know you're not getting anything coming at you when somebody's trying to data storm is an example. You've heard of denial of service attacks. One of the big things that various players will do is they'll bombard a network with traffic in the hopes that they can crash it, right? And that's just, if they can crash it, they can also put code in there, which is when it crashes and it reboots, I'm watching, right? So firewalls are your friend. They stop that, right? And they also stop traffic from going outside of your network that may not need to. Talked a little last week about my wife's printer. I want to send something to my wife's printer from my office downstairs to her office upstairs. That traffic never leaves the network. It just goes from inside the network from one device to the other. And firewalls will prevent any of that traffic from leaking out, if you will, or anybody trying to sniff anything. And antivirus software, you just need to do that. It's one of those things. It's like coffee in the morning. Need antivirus, need to keep it updated. It's part of life. People aren't going to stop trying to steal things, so don't let them. So this is kind of Tom's top 10, whatever you want to call it. I'm dating myself. Letterman's gone, been long gone, but you guys get the idea. Okay, first thing you do, new network out of the box. Pops up, what's the first thing you do? Well, you get into the router itself and you change its password. Every router I've ever configured in the past 30 years comes out of the box with a password of admin and a user ID of admin. So I'm at your house and I'm for some reason feeling, ornery. I can get into your router and screw up your entire network with admin. Now I've got control of that router box and I'm sitting in your house and I can do anything I want. Not a good idea. So that first thing you do, top right over there, this is the landing screen for my router. I just copied the top banner. And it's basically saying, change the password, Tom. You got in here with admin. Let's change that. And you can leave the ID admin, it's easy to remember, but change the password to something complex so nobody can guess it. The next thing you do is you change the internal workings of that network. The SSID is basically the network. When you pull up the Wi-Fi, you get that network ID that you want to log into. It's called an SSID. Change that. The right-hand side, this is a picture of my modem as it came out of the box. This is what it says now. So I changed XF setup dot whatever to this. What is that? It's my wife's high school and the year she graduated. I remember it. Wouldn't mean anything to anybody else, right? So nobody's going to guess, oh, that's Tom's network if they just drive around the street. And then this password is obviously not going to show it to you, but you get the idea, right? So now I've secured the hardware. Nobody can get into the hardware because I've changed my admin situation. And I've changed, anybody who walks up to my modem and goes, oh, I can get in this network. No, you can't because I changed it. So you just lock down the hub of your network with 2 easy steps. And basically next thing you want to change is this addressing schema. We talked last time about 192.168.0.1 is the default networking schema for every router shipped. It is what it is. They got to start somewhere. So I use admin and 192.168.0.1. And you want to change that. It's not hard to do. So basically you change gateway address and you change the range of addresses that are assignable on that network. Yes, sir.
Tom, and where is all this information available for us to change?
If you go into the router, it's a menu. It's like it's a user interface. Usually this is under the LAN. There'd be a local LAN is what it says usually in the setup. But you can just drive through it. These screens come up. You don't have to really know a lot about this, but I could. Yeah. Yeah. So basically you go into a browser. Okay. So thank you. To back up half step, you go into a browser, it's like any other browser tab. And wait for basically do it this way. This is the easiest way to do it. Let the network set itself up. Let it go by all its defaults. So Comcast gives you a box, you plug it in, let them set it up, let them make it work. Okay. And then you can log in using the default passwords into the network. That will get you an IP address on that network on whatever device you're sitting in front of. Okay. From there, you can go to a browser because you'll have the gateway address that's defaulted. You'll have that 10.0.0.1 or you'll have the 192.168.0.1. Key that into your browser tab instead of like HTTP www.facebook.com. Just key in that address and it'll bring up your default router screen like this. And from there, there's a menu, which I didn't copy because it would have gotten very complicated and very twisted. But there's a menu here where you can set up local LAN, network ID. You can set this stuff up in that user interface. That's a good question. So change that and then turn off remote management. Because again, you don't want anybody getting in there through a back door. And remote management is a back door. So if I'm, driving down the street and I'm being nefarious, I can scan the network. I can scan the neighborhood. And if I know something about the neighborhood served by Comcast, then I know a lot about the Comcast network. It's public information. Not very hard to figure out what I can try, which areas I can probe and look for an opening. So if you're taking this off, then I can't get in there. Just turn that up. It can be either. So this would be a wired or a Wi-Fi connection to your router. Can be either. Can be either. A little bit about these. We didn't talk much about ports, but in the TCP/IP addressing schema, there are a number of ports defined. And 8080 is what commonly say. When I say HTTP www.facebook.com, that traffic, because it's HTTP, is routed through this port on your router. You can change that in a more sophisticated environment. You can leave this on, but change that port. So again, nobody's going to figure out you changed it to port 8087. Because they're not going to know that 8087 is where you put HTTP remote access. But that's more than the average homeowner is going to want to worry about. So I just say turn it off because there's no reason for anybody to get in there. So those are sort of some easy tips and tricks to kind of get you your main password changed, your Wi-Fi SSID and password changed, and your addressing schema changed. That puts you outside of the realm of 99% of people out there. People just don't do all three of those things. They leave those things open. So that's where the scammers are going to go. If you're that 1 or 2% that changes all this, we should probably do a router class on how to change all this. I thought about that for this presentation, and there's a whole section, which you're not going to see today, which is a bunch of screenshots of how this all works. But I decided it was beyond the scope of an hour, and it was probably beyond the scope of this class for this time. But if there's a hands, if people want to do that, maybe I can get that done for the next time. So what you end up with, if this is properly set up, in my opinion, is something that looks like this. This is, again, just screen prints out of my router. There's nothing, I didn't make any of this up. The top section, you don't get to decide. Your ISP defines this for you. And this is part of their, when you say a gateway to the internet, this is where you plug into the internet. This is how you get services. So we talked about this a little bit last time. Where is the internet? It's at 68.56.3.32. Irrelevant to the average user. That's something that Comcast, Xfinity got as a block of addresses from what we talked about last week. And this is how they're assigning them in this region. Okay. Which door do I use? You come through this 3.1 door. That's where we were looking for traffic to come from you for us to redistribute to the internet. How do I know where an address is? I'll only look up facebook.com. You type in facebook.com or somesite.com, and this basically is where the address book lives. So it's like the phone book. What's Tom's address? It's 123 Elm Street, right? I know Tom Robinson. I have no idea where he lives. Remember we had a phone book? Remember how it used to work? We have to go look at Tom Robinson. What is this one? Or there's 17 Tom Robinsons here. Which one are we looking at? That's how they sort that out. Okay. This is where you can set up your gateway addresses. We talked about this basically on the last screen. And this is defined as a DHCP scope. Techie term for how many addresses are in my book and where do they start, right? So you put a new street in, we're going to start at the corner, and that's going to be 205. And the end of the street is going to be 307. That's all that is. And then this is just how you know what's connected to what. This is Ethernet plugged into the wall. This is Wi-Fi on a 5G network. That's my cell phone. This is one of the cable boxes attached to this TV. It uses a different protocol, which is media access over coax, that black, round black cable we've had since the 70s. And this is another, my Nest thermostat. It's on a different network. So this is my cell phone. This is one of my Internet of Things devices. See how those separate networks? This doesn't live on the same network that this does. Because I want this to have access to everything I want to have access to. This one doesn't get access to everything in my network. That's how you separate those two out. So the sophisticated network that you're after at the end of all this, and I'm a little bit teasing there because this is probably beyond the scope of the average homeowner, but you take the router and you create 4 networks, a guest Wi-Fi with 1.1, a home Wi-Fi with 2.1. These are physically separate networks. Traffic won't cross. It's like living in the upstairs and downstairs of a house with no stairs, right? This network is 3.1, and that's where your IoT devices live. Why? You don't want them figuring out what you're doing over here or what you're doing over here. You sure as heck don't want them in your home PC. You want them to read the temperature. You want to ask the weather. You want them to adjust the thermostat. You know, you want them to play music in the bath, whatever you want to do. All right, that's all well and good, but don't cross this traffic over. And then the fourth one is a fourth network. Again, this is probably 1 or 2 of these is probably appropriate in an average home environment. So you may have, a home Wi-Fi and a guest network with segmented off with your IoT devices. That's probably enough for the average user. I just use this example because it really does segment out traffic. And unless you have credentials on these networks, they might as well be on Mars, even though they live in the same house. We'll stop there because this is relatively straightforward, complex. Yes. Each one of these separate SSIDs. So yes, you would have, let's say this is guest 1, 2.4 gigahertz. This might be, home 2.5 gigahertz network. This might be, IoT. So yeah, you would separate those out. And your router table is how you do this. So when you set up that DHCP scope and you set up the network, there's usually an option to set up 2 networks. And you can define them differently. You can give them entirely different addressing schemes. And then you can assign these devices to that network when you log into it. So you may pull up your wireless in the house, and maybe you have 4 SSIDs in your house. And when you log into your phone, maybe you give this one out to your guests that are coming for the Christmas, right? And you say, okay, guys, you can log into this one. Password is whatever it is. They can see these other ones because they're broadcast. Well, they can, or you can actually set these SSIDs up to broadcast or not. So if you want to hide this one, so nobody ever even sees it, you tell the network SSID not to broadcast. So nobody even sees it.
But
If you know the name. Exactly. So that's why hiding in plain sight is kind of the theme here, right? These devices are all well and good, but you don't want to mix them, right? And we all got these things. I mean, they're sort of taking over life for a lot of us, right? But you don't want them, let's say this is where your financial records live, or where your family heredity lives, or your grandma's pictures live, or whatever. You don't want anybody over here getting direct access to those things. That making sense? Correct. Correct. Yeah, the question was, this phone is just Wi-Fi access. That's correct. And so that's the idea behind these is segment them out. Let your router work for you. There's a lot of sophistication in your router. And most people pull it out of the box, plug it in, turn it on, I'm done. And they leave themselves all kinds of vulnerable holes that are not hard to fill. 2 passwords, change them. SSIDs, change it, right? And then get a little sophisticated with how you want to set up your guest networks. You learn, kind of take those 3 or 4 tips, you're probably on the way to having a pretty secure network. Change the passwords, change the IDs, segment your traffic. You may not have so the question is, should you use the router supplied by your provider, your ISP, or should you buy one of your own? You may not have a choice. Sometimes these ISPs don't like you to use third-party equipment, right? But that's okay. Because again, you can set up networks attached to networks. What do I mean by that? So your ISP ships you a router and it's your hardware device. You do the things we've talked about here, and you really want a secure network. You can set up another wireless network in the house. Just plug it into your router and it stands alone as its own network. So that's another way you can segment it. Just physically change the addresses or change the hardware. A good example might be a typical business environment where you've got maybe 3 or 4 floors of an office building, and you've got finance on 4th floor, you've got customer service on floor 1. Those 2 folks work for the same company. They don't necessarily need to be in the same network, right? And they don't necessarily need to be access to the same services within that business. So in that case, you might have the router on the ground floor, and you put another wireless network on the 4th floor that only services finance. So this is sort of a sophisticated look at it, but I wanted to show it because you're not stuck with one network. You can absolutely create more than one network, suggest you do, and you segment traffic and devices off into their own bucket. Might look at kids' bedrooms. I don't want to live in my kid's bedroom. Good grief, I don't want to look in that place. Put him over here, So let's move on to device security tips. Use a biometric login. Your fingerprint is your fingerprint. Your iris scan is your iris scan, right? Not going to ever change that. My phone, fingerprint. My tablet, fingerprint, right? And then it's also got a lock key on it. That's because I'm paranoid. Enable auto lock. So, you settings of screen goes blank. That may not be auto lock. So just because the screen goes blank doesn't mean the device is locked. So there's usually a setting in your settings, and I'm going to show you this in a second, on your Android, your iOS, or your Apple device to set auto lock. So if that screen goes dark, that phone locks. So make sure you're doing that. And the same thing with a laptop. How many times you go into Starbucks, you got your coffee, you want to go get another refill, or you want to go talk to your friend across from you, leave your laptop sitting there. Nobody's going to steal it. It's open. It's on the network. I can't tell you how many times when I was in the corporate world, I'd walk through a department and we added a policy. You walk away from your computer, it's Control D, locked. I'd walk by all the time and see them. And I'd have lots of fun with those people. The second time I found it. Kind of like my neighbor. I told you my neighbor story last week about changing the picture. I had a lot of fun with that. Install security updates. Easy to do. Just let the device install updates. Don't be afraid of it. Microsoft, you can trust. Apple, you can trust, right? Google, you can trust. And if you got auto updates on your device, that's the easiest way, because they spend their entire life looking for bad characters and bad software. That's part of their service. Let them take care of you, right? And then use a secure Wi-Fi. So we talked about, the little lock on the Wi-Fi. Is it open or is it closed? Closed only, right? And I'm going to talk about a VPN here in a second. The VPN is not that complicated. All it basically does is between 2 points on the internet, your device and wherever you're going, creates a tunnel. So look at it like putting armor on, right? You don't walk outside when it's 20 degrees and blowing without a coat. That's all VPN is. It simply takes the traffic coming off of your computer anonymizes it, scrambles it, basically encrypts it, and then exchanges a key for the other end of the service. So there's a VPN server. Now you're not communicating willy-nilly to the internet. You're handshaking with that VPN service provider, and everything you send across the internet is encrypted, including your IP address, which is probably the biggest thing. So it doesn't know who you are or where you are. One of the tricks I like to play is I like to watch Formula One racing. I like to watch Sky Sports. Can't get Sky Sports in the United States, but I can VPN into England. Now they think I'm sitting in London watching F1 on Sky Sports. I'm not doing anything I shouldn't be doing. I just want to get a service that I can't get in the States because I like to watch Formula One racing. So basically, that's all a VPN. I'll talk a little more about a VPN in a second. But if, again, tried to boil this down to 3 or 4 tips and tricks that you could take away to make your life easier that aren't too complicated or too technical. Happy to go into any of this if you guys questions, but these are kind of common sense in a sort of way. So where are all these settings? I just screenshot these 3 devices. You really need to get familiar with your iPhone, your Android, or your Windows device. Get into these settings and play around with them. You can't hurt anything. Just turn them back off if it doesn't work like you want it to work or it's too locked down for you. But if you haven't spent some time in these settings, looking at how you secure these kinds of things we've been talking about, I would strongly suggest that you do. And get your grandson to help you if you have to. Great grandson. Okay, there you go. Find a 12-year-old. They got this figured out. Actually, my 2-year-old grandson is stealing my phone and opening it up. It really surprised me. It's like, how the hell did you get that phone open? He's 2. Yeah. Laptop, same thing. Lock that thing down, right? Make sure you have a password on your laptop. It's just sitting on the kitchen counter. Nobody's going to bother it. That's all well and good. It only takes one person with bad attitude to mess up things, right? And it also is very easy to forget. Again, the Starbucks example. I've done this. I'm on my laptop at a Starbucks. I'd like another coffee, please. Get up, go over to the counter. My laptop's sitting there, right? Don't do that. Use full disk encryption. This is probably not necessary for the average person, but if you keep anything sensitive on your laptop, like financial information, right, or legal documents or whatever, but open password manager so that I could get in there and get all the passwords that I need. Encrypt that stuff. And BitLocker and FileVault are 2. BitLocker is built into Windows, right? It will encrypt your hard drive so that NSA can't get into it, right? And that it's still readable in your machine, under your control, under your passwords. If somebody were to steal your laptop, take that drive out and try and read it, not going to happen. And this is built into Windows. These are all things I'm showing you that are already out there. You don't have to buy anything or learn anything new. These are all built into the devices you already have.
Do you have any opinion on online drives versus local drives?
Mostly secure. So the question was online drives versus local drive. Cloud storage. You probably heard of cloud storage. A reputable company like a Google or an Apple or Dropbox is where I would stay. There's like 3 or 4 of them out there that you're pretty safe with. And the reason I say that is because, a Google account is an example. You have to be logged in to that Google account. I have 3. And if I have files in account A, account B can't see them. Right. Again, account B, C can't see them. So again, typical use case. I'll just kind of tell stories on myself. I got my business on account A, and that's got all the legal, the contracts and the invoices and all that stuff. Account C is shared amongst my family and all the family pictures, vacation plans, whatever is all out there. So the world can see that if I invite them to it. But the account A, only I have access to what I have one of my partners. Very easy to do, but it's account specific. So you got to kind of make sure you don't put things in the wrong bucket. But yeah, I think they're pretty secure for the most part. And don't share devices. I guess this is, again, a thing we all do. My 2-year-old had my cell phone. Shouldn't have done that, right? He didn't do anything because he obviously didn't know what to do, but don't share these devices. Yes, sir.
Subject of Best Buy, I use their service when I can't figure something out.
Geek Squad?
What's that?
Geek Squad?
Yeah, online.
Huh?
I also use WebRoot as their browser. Am I doing bad things, good things, so?
I don't like third parties in my stuff for the most part. What do you use them for?
Basically, when I can't either find something, can't get a font on a spreadsheet, but I don't do it because you close all spreadsheets. It is supposedly but I'll just have a fake spreadsheet up there and I'll say, hey, how do we capitalize this? Or how do I use this? How do I use that? But I don't do it on a live spreadsheet with data.
Chat GPT.
What's that?
Just get into Chat GPT free account and you can ask it any question you want. And it gives good answers. So, and it's built in, like if you use Chrome, Gemini is built in. So it's always there on the sidebar. How do I capitalize something in Excel? I don't want the cell to be green with purple letters.
Right.
Boom. Right. So I would move away from experts like Best Buy and people that have to get into your computer and go to something more like an expert system like ChatGPT.
Okay, thank you.
ChatGPT, it's local AI basically. So what she asked what ChatGPT was, there's a number of AI clients out there. Personally, I like Perplexity. Perplexity.com is one I like better because I just like the way it works. But use an expert system. AI is your friend these days. There's nothing you can ask it. In fact, a lot of this presentation was me musing into ChatGPT and it's coming back with answers. And the fun part about some of these AI tools is once you learn how to ask them questions, you get some really cool answers, but you also exercises the brain. Okay, it gave me this kind of weird answer. Did I ask it the wrong question? Let me try that again. And you can get a conversation going, quote unquote, where you say, okay, that was a good idea, but can you tailor it this way? Sure. Right. So I would, if you have some energy and some time, get a ChatGPT account, get a Perplexity account, and just have some fun with it. It's pretty easy. It's pretty easy to work with, and it gives you good answers. Yes, ma'am. You'll save you tons of time. Yeah, we're going on a vacation for our 40th anniversary next month, and we got the idea was a couple 3 days of just she and I having whatever. And I said, I'm on my 40th anniversary trip, my wife and me. I've got 3 days in Oregon. What do I do? Came back with an entire litany of things with pictures, hotel recommendations, places to stop along the way. I'm like, okay. So it's just that kind of conversational, and to save me a ton of time, it's going to make me like a rock star because I planned a trip for my wife. Yay. Okay. Passwords. These are kind of common sense, but do we do them? Right? It's easy. Just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 star, right? So, avoid reuse. And this is hard. I get it, right? I think last time I looked at my password machine, I had over 200 passwords to various different things in my account. And were there some of them reused? Absolutely. Absolutely. I won't lie, but don't do that. And then, avoid things like, X, Y, Z, 1, 2, 3, right? Too easy to guess. These are the characters that a nefarious player is going to start to scan, right? They're going to go, I bet they're using some combination of these things. And they can scan 1 million of them in a minute. I mean, they just scan the heck out of them and come up, oh, that worked. Lovely, right? Don't do that. So use things that are complex, right? Yes, sir.
How many digits?
Depends on, I like 12 for anything financial. 8's probably good enough for your average login to Facebook or, Amazon or whatever you're using. But anything that's going to be financially oriented, I like 12 and like a minimum of four of those characters to be something unusual, like a star or an exclamation point or whatever. Yes, sir.
Tom, many browsers will, when we get to a login screen, will suggest that we use a randomly generated password. And how does a mere mortal tackle and remember 14-character passwords?
Thank you, Louis. Good to segue. Password manager. There's a recent one built into Google. So if you're running Chrome as a browser, you can turn on Password Manager and it will generate them for you and remember them for you. And that's an encrypted file on your computer. So you can't just copy it off and read it. Okay. Dashlane is the one I've been using for a decade or more. There's a bunch of them out there. I just kind of grabbed the 5 or 6 because I wanted to illustrate the points of what you should look for, right? Bitwarden, 1Password, and LastPass. There's 3 programs that are out there on the internet, and I use Dashlane. Xkey is another one, but you want to make sure that it's biometric. So I can log into my device, access my passwords, and my biometric login is tied to my password manager. So I don't have to do multiple steps to get to my passwords. I think that's a key feature. Is it free? Who doesn't like free, right? Again, I pay for one called Dashlane because I want a little more extra security and I got some complex stuff in there that I really want to make sure is locked down. Cloud Sync, what does that mean? So I'm on my phone and I'm using my passwords and I go home and I log into my computer. Those passwords will translate. So I don't have to have a separate version on my laptop and a separate version on my mobile device. The cloud basically syncs those up and my passwords are available to me under my fingerprint behind a Google login. Then I can get my passwords. But you absolutely want to do this because nobody can remember these crazy passwords. You know, tell 12 characters, you generate something crazy, I'm not going to remember it, right? So, and plus over 150 passwords, it's not going to happen. Browser integration. There's a plugin in your browser. If you use Safari or you use Chrome or whatever you use, make sure that that thing's resident as a plugin in your browser. Because nobody wants to go, what's my Facebook password? Every time you got to do it, right? It should be resident in that browser. Two-factor authentication. We're going to talk about two-factor authentication here in a second, but these stay in time. Everything's moving to two-factor authentication. I'll explain a little bit what that is in a minute. And then open source. Yeah, not really a fan of open source. Open source is the double-edged sword. What open source means is the creator of that software program has made it available on the internet in open source. Source being the actual code that is the tool. Great for people that want to do things like browser integration, right? Because somebody can build an add-on to that program that makes it work in a browser, right? Good example of this is Apple versus Microsoft, right? Or Google, right? They don't like to share, right? But if you have a password manager that is written by Apple and it's open sourced, then smart people can take that code from Apple and make it work on Google. Good thing, bad thing. In password managers, I'm not a big fan. What? Because, you know, open source password manager, just do the math, right? Not necessarily the greatest idea. Better off with going with a program like Dashlane's one I use. It has specific versions for Windows versus Apple versus iPhone versus Android. So they and they will communicate, but the software itself is specific to that device. That making any sense? All right. What is two-factor authentication? It's really quite simple. It's a handshake. It's an extra layer of protection and requires 2 types of verification. Something you already know, a password. And then it requires something that they can communicate to, something you have, like a phone. So you log into your brokerage account and they're saying, oh, first time I've seen this computer, we need to send you a code. They text you a number. You got to go to your phone. You're on your computer logging in. You got to go to your phone and say, okay, a code is AB, whatever it is. Key that into the computer. Now the host, brokerage account as an example, on your laptop knows that you are that person because you have that physical device called a phone. And you were able to get an email and translate that code into that phone. So now that's basically got a handshake 2 ways to know that you are who you say you are, right? They're basically taking this a step further recently. You might have seen passkey or log in with a token. You want to save a passkey. So once you've done this on a device, you've got your laptop logged into your bank account and they've entered this code, they verified you're the same person. And they've also verified that the phone number on your brokerage account profile is the one they just texted something to. Pretty secure that that's the same person. Then they usually ask a question, do you want to create a passkey for the next time you log in. And what that basically says is it's an encrypted token on your device that they create and place on your device and says, instead of doing that handshake all over again, we're looking for the token. If that token is there, we're good.
Is that the same as remember this?
Yes, 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 exactly. So basically, if your password's even stolen, they still can't get in because they don't have their device. They could log in and say, I'm going to send you a token to your phone. Well, I have the phone. I stole the laptop. I don't have the phone. Okay. So strongly recommended for anything that's out that puts you on the internet, right? Your email, social media, anything having to do with finance needs something like this to make sure you're covered. And it's pretty much become a de facto standard. I mean, you've probably seen it already. This is not something new, but it is something that you should pay attention to. What is a VPN? It's just that. You have a service provider which sits in the middle. Usually it's a piece of software on your device. And it says, do you want me to anonymize and encrypt this traffic? Anonymize, I'm going to hide your IP address. I'm going to hide your location. I'm going to mask anything having to do with who you are, where you are, or what you are. And then any traffic that goes across this connection, I'm going to put into a bubble and encrypt it and encase it and make sure that nobody can read it as it goes across the internet. So my example of Formula One racing, I launch a client on my PC, and my network says, okay, Tom's using a VPN. VPN comes up and says, where are you today, Tom? I think I'm in London. Lovely. You're in London. And so as far as any traffic goes, it connects me to a VPN server in London. It's part of their network on the internet. So now all my traffic is going across the internet to London. I acquired an accent all of a sudden. All right. So then I say, okay, where do you want to go? I like to go to Sky Sports, please. Sky Sports says, oh, Tom's in England. Lovely, no problem. Log him in. If I wasn't in England, as far as that application thought, I'm sitting in Holland, Michigan, they're going to go, dude, we don't do United States. So that's basically what that does, is it anonymizes my traffic. It routes me to a third-party location, which is basically the director of that traffic. And it puts all my traffic in a bubble. So it can't be read, can't be intercepted, can't be interpreted. That makes sense?
Automatic. So
Sorry?
almost all banking traffic is going to be secure,
Correct.
whether it's in via VPN or not, sure.
Correct. Yeah, it's a good question. There's two levels of security in terms of traffic. There's what's called secure socket layer, which is SSL. And if you see it on the internet, it's HTTPS instead of HTTP. That's S means secure. And what that basically says is there's a certificate that is presented or acquired by the provider of that service. Let's call it Bank of America for sake of discussion. They register their service with the certificate authority, excuse me, and that basically says we have a secure socket into that bank. So that's why you have to use HTTPS to get into a bank or a brokerage account. You can't use HTTP because that's not secure. Okay. So the secure socket layer, HTTPS, is sort of the first one. And then if you take that traffic and you wrap it in a bubble and you route it through England, then people don't know who the heck you are or where the heck you started. Right. And those are the two sort of ideas behind those two things. Sir.
Looking at the VPN on my McAfee account, it's like it gives you a choice of where you want to be. And sometimes it's like things like close by to you in the US versus you could put in England or whatever. Can you be more specific about where in the US you are?
With a VPN?
Yeah.
Yeah, you could say I'm in LA or I'm in Chicago. That's basically that when you pull up the VPN client, it will give, that's first thing the questions to ask you is, where are you? Right? And you can, that's a list. And you can usually filter by city, by county, whatever. I used to do a lot of business in Singapore. And so I have my office in Singapore was behind a VPN. And to get to certain things from that office or in that office, I had to basically dial in to Singapore. Well, Singapore is very strict about internet laws and what they will let you do. So I spent a lot of time in Sydney when I was working in Singapore, because I'd log into Sydney, I'm sitting in Sydney and I'm accessing my office in Singapore. You know. It is what it is, right? So I think I've covered any questions on VPNs. They're relatively straightforward. They're a service that you access that anonymizes your traffic and routes it through different places, and it makes you appear as if you're in that place. That's sorry. Oh, yes, you have to pay for it. Yes, yes. And, you know, as far as recommendations, NordVPN is a good one. NORD is probably the biggest one. That's one I've been using for a long time. But there are a number of reputable companies out there that do that. That's usually, you know, $20 a month in that range somewhere. Just a piece of software you load over here, and then you can anonymize yourself and disappear, if you will. Okay, why is that not working? Technical difficulty. Let's see if we can figure that out. Got myself out of sync here. Excuse me. Let me fix this real quick. Why is that not acting like it's supposed to act? Yeah, it's got a virus in it. I didn't use my VPN. And this is my closer too. You guys got to see this. And my remote control is totally gone here. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, this control is changing this screen, but it's not changing that screen. So there's two more slides I wanted to cover with y'all to make sure that we're in the right place. I can advance here, but I can't advance on the screen. You know, even a tech guy, I can break anything. There it goes. You got it. Thank you. So this is, you know, you take away nothing else from this presentation, probably this checklist. Okay. Router passwords, router passwords, router passwords, passwords. Did I say passwords? Change your address scheme, right? Nobody needs to know what's inside your house. 6-bedroom house, 35-bedroom house, 12-room mansion. Doesn't matter. It's your house. Change the addressing scheme. Change the layout. Change who sits where. Take guest traffic to another network, right? And that way you know that whatever's in your house that you don't want anybody else getting to, they're not getting there, right? Alternative email and unique credentials. Just create something funny. I don't care what it is. Maybe it's your childhood nickname. I don't care. As long as you know it, nobody else knows it. Make that secure. Strong passwords, we talked about that. Use a password manager because we can't remember all this crazy stuff. Nobody can, right? Two-factor authentication enabled. Use a VPN when you're in public. I don't care if you're in an airport, you know, if you travel internationally, you spend a lot of time in a coffee house, use a VPN. They're cheap. And last thing you want to do is leave all your personal information in the airport in Bangkok, right? Just not something you want to do. Right. Yes, ma'am.
Let's say you're traveling and you don't subscribe to a service and you just want to do something on the spot. Is there a way to do that without, you know, subscribing to some service?
Yes, but it depends on which device you're on. Some of the devices have VPNs built into them. Like Windows has a VPN client. I don't necessarily like it, but they have one. So it depends on which device you're talking about. But honestly, if you're going to be traveling internationally and you're going to spend any amount of time away from your home base, just spend the $19 and get one. And just, yeah, we don't have to worry about it, right?
locked in for life. You can just
No,
do
no.
it 1 month at a time.
Yeah, monthly subscription, you download it off the internet, you install it on your computer, and you're off and running. Yeah, well, yeah, that's a good tip. Most of them, if you buy a subscription, you can load it on your phone and your PC. Good catch. Yes, sir.
I have. But I have an Apple computer, Apple phone, Apple tablet. Why does the Windows antivirus work? All of it?
No. And the Windows antivirus will be on your Windows device, just a Windows device. No, won't work on your Apple or your Mac typically. Typically, yeah. Now I've looked at 360 for a while, but there may be some options to download some of that stuff onto an Apple or an Apple device. Like I know you can put the Office onto an Apple device. I'm not sure how the antivirus translates over. Yep. So this one gets a bit geeky, but how do I know what I know? Okay, so this is if you are, let's say you have a new network, Comcast installed it, you got the Wi-Fi up and running, and you made to connect your laptop to it, right? Simple enough. How do I know the rest of this gobbledygook, where all of this stuff live? Well, basically, if you on a Windows device, goes back to, when I was a young kid. For the search bar on Windows, bottom of your taskbar, there's that search window. You enter CMD, which is command as far as Windows goes. You'll get a screen that looks like the top right, the top box. You type in ipconfig/all, that gets you your entire litany of data on your IP addressing schema on your device. Every address, every MAC address, every version of IP4, IP6, you get this screen. Why is this important? Well, because really what you're looking for in your router setup is these two numbers. What is the IP address assigned to my device? In this case, it's 10.0.0.88. And what is the gateway address that was assigned to me by my ISP? So I know where to go looking for my router. One of the questions you had earlier was, how do I get to my router? Well, you have to have this address, this 10.0.0.1. So you go to your browser, you type in 10.0.0.1, and you'll get a home screen for your router. That's your starting point. So this looks complicated, but it's built into every Windows machine. And all it basically takes is remembering how to type CMD into the search bar. You'll get a black window will come up. And in that black window will be that top red box. You just type in ipconfig/all, and everything you want to know about your networking is right there.
Tom, you've
Yes,
just
sir.
described what Windows users should do. What about people who use Apple computers?
Yeah, and this is the interesting thing about Apple versus Mac. It's about 20 years ago, they use the same chipset. So this is a chipset level query. It's called a UART, but it's the chip on the computer that actually does the internet and does the networking piece. Apple and Windows hardware devices are very, very similar under the covers. So that's why the kind of same command structure works, because you're querying the chip on the hardware.
I personally have a love-hate relationship with Apple products, and I would not know where to enter the command to display this on an Apple device compared to a Windows or DOS.
Can you help me out with that one? That's probably a terminal.
You basically have to open up a window that gets you into Unix, the underlying operating system on Mac. So it's called terminal, and it's one of the utilities that shows up in that box when you see all your applications that are basic utilities for Mac, and it's one of those.
Right. And that's, again, the commonality of what she's described there is interesting, because back in the day, late 70s, terminal was the metaphor, if you will, to query any operating system. So the IBM mainframes and things all basically built off of a terminal interface. So that's basically a vestige of the dinosaur era, where you can actually open up a terminal window, which is just that, and query the underlying hardware and the underlying operating system. Before they built all the layers, from the 7 layers of software I talked about last week, before they had all those layers to manage things, nice user interfaces and nice icons and nice colors, we had to do all this. So that's still there. The vestigial tail of the computer world.
This is not really a question. It's a piece of advice for anybody who's listening. And I'm sure you've run into this and I have run into this several times, but say a few days ago, somebody who is an average user downloads a new solitaire program and they play it a few times. And then all of a sudden, this big blue screen pops up that says, your computer has been compromised. Call Microsoft right now at this number. And I've seen tens of thousands of dollars go out the door that cannot be retrieved by people calling that number.
Back to the phishing email. Don't do it. If you see one of those things, the best thing you can do, reboot your computer. And in Windows, I would even go to Task Manager, which is Control-Alt-Delete. It brings up a list of programs that are actually running. You can kill them one by one. And if you don't want to do that, just basically go to shutdown. So just wherever, and if you can't get there because they got the screen locked, just hold your power button and it'll kill it. And then when you reboot it, basically that should be gone. If it's not, you very carefully launch whatever it was, your browser or whatever source it was, and then run your antivirus before you don't load anything else, because the antivirus will usually catch that. It's usually a Trojan kind of a virus. Good advice. Anybody else?
Well, maybe. What about local resources? You talked about some of it being available online, whether it's through ChatGPT to give its instructions on how to use specific software. What about resources for hardware assistance in the Holland area, in the Grand Rapids area? Where do we turn to?
Most of the mom and pops have gone away because things like Geek Squad at Best Buy have come online. That'd probably be the first place I'd start, right? Is you have a hardware issue, especially if you bought it at Best Buy, but they will do anything, will fix anything for you. I would take it to them because they have an interest in making sure that things are not done improperly. Some of the mom and pops, you got to watch out a little bit. You know, their motivations may not be as clean as some of the bigger organizations. But I would try a local Best Buy or a local retailer like that first. Yes, sir.
I know the Herrick Library is offering computer counseling, I guess, Wednesday and Thursday afternoons. I'm just thinking about going over my Kindle because I've got a lot of questions, and that's not online. It's obviously not getting any data, but I don't know if that's another reputable source or not, but it is being offered at the library.
Yeah, one of the things you want to try it with devices like Kindles is planned obsolescence. Like I've got a first generation Alexa speaker, right? It doesn't work anymore because Amazon quit supporting networking upgrades, so it won't connect to my current network. And I've tried hacking it safety of waste and Sunday, so it's a brick. It's purely functional, but I didn't use it for a year when I moved and got out of a box. So I'll put this up again, and literally went to ChatGPT and said, "Here's my serial number. Why can't this connect to the internet?" And it basically said, "You're out of luck, dude." In a nutshell. And Amazon quit supporting it. No longer connects it to older networks.
And that appears to be true across the software world.
Yeah.
If you happen to be running version 13 since 2007 and version 19 is out now, chances yours is no longer supported. So if you call, you will be told, we're not going to help you.
Yeah, Windows 10 is a great example of that. If you haven't upgraded to Windows 11, they're pulling support for Windows 10, and it will stop working, physically stop working if you don't upgrade. So that's one of the reasons I keep up your virus updates, keep your devices updated. Just do that. Because, when Microsoft's very good about saying, you know what, thanks for updating, but we're not supporting it anymore. Yes, sir.
Just a quick informational one that I believe Evergreen Commons has a tech
Yes.
support on Thursday afternoon.
I think it's Wednesdays.
Okay.
Yeah, I forgot about that. That's a good catch. That's a good environment over there because they have the big sitting areas where you can gather as a group and you can bring problems up. That's a good venue for that. Well, yeah, I guess the message I want you all to get is, this stuff is not rocket science. It's more due diligence. The learning curves aren't that complicated. It's built into your devices. It just takes housekeeping, right? And you wouldn't, you build a new house or you move, what's the first thing you're going to do? Change the locks, right? Same thing with passwords. Just change them. Don't take the defaults. Like I walked into my brother's house recently and I was, what's the Wi-Fi password? His wife goes, I don't know. Went downstairs on the modem. It's exactly what was on the modem. Jeff, buddy. He's what works? I don't care. So, so I didn't play with his network like I have others because I didn't want to get beat up. But anyway, now with IP6, we're a long way. Yeah, is that in that picture? Didn't IP6. Yeah, we didn't talk about this a little bit, but IP4 and IP6. IP4 was the 192.168 addressing schema. It's just like 7-digit phone numbers. There's not enough of them. So they've gone to IP6, which is here. And you see how different that looks than that. So you take, back to your high school statistics class, permutations and combinations. How many factors am I taking at a time and create how many permutations? The numbers are in the billions. Now, you might say, well, billions, I was always over 3 billion devices on the internet right now. So, I mean, I have 27 of them on my network, so I can't say a whole lot, right? But that's the point. These things just grow and they just, so that's why they created IP6. And that also translates not only to your local machine's IP address, but how they route traffic, how they parse traffic across the internet. So that gives them a whole lot more permutations and combinations they go through. Yes, sir.
Back to my very, very original question an hour or so ago.
Yes.
I know, first of all, tell me if I'm wrong. If I decide to go into, say, my Chase bank account, I can just say, don't know the password. That will force a change in password. Am I correct?
Correct.
Okay. How do you change the email address, though, with Chase?
Log into your account
Okay.
and go to your account settings, and you can change the default email address in there.
Is there actually a topic called default email address?
Yeah, in your account settings, there's usually a primary and a secondary email address. You want to flip those around because you want to keep the current one as your backup
Okay.
and use your new one, your brand new minted email address as your primary. And then you'll also need to go however you receive email. I use Google, so I have multiple accounts in my Chrome browser, and make sure you log in using that account so that your traffic goes to that inbox. Inboxes are relatively straightforward. We all have a mailbox, right? And so your primary address, it's like having another box at your driveway. But you have to make sure that you're opening up the different box because email is not going to flow to each other, right? That make any sense?
Any other questions? Yes, Helen, hold on here.
I can repeat it.
This IP6 is really interesting to me, and I'm wondering, I mean, our devices have to be updated in order to use IP6, or how does that work?
No, it's built in. Basically, it was ratified as a standard in 2012. Don't quote me on that. And since then, every operating system basically supports it. So in your router, you'll have an IP4 and an IP6 address space. And you can tell it use IP6 or use IP4 primarily. And you can also set the scope situation for using those two networks. Another way to separate networks, we talk about the 4 kinds of networks. You could absolutely create an IP6 address schema for network 3 and use an IP4 for network 1. because those are familiar addresses. So, you know, your kids come over, they want to use the Wi-Fi, whatever, make that familiar. Crazy stuff like the Internet of Things, make that an IP6 address that people will go, what the heck is that? Because then you're on a separate network with a separate protocol, with separate devices, and then they don't know each other exists.
One more comment about resources. You mentioned Herrick Library. Before they refurbished the interior of the library, they did have classes for various software packages that were commonly used. I do not know if they still have them now. It's worth asking if you're interested, whether it's for Word or for Excel or something else. And that would be held in the area they call Groundworks, where they have a number of technical devices available for people to use, including scanning, including podcasting, 3D printing, and computing. So it's worth asking if next time you're at Herrick, or send an email to the librarian and ask if it's still available and when that might be.
I know that Hannah and Amy were going to have a class this summer, 5 weeks long, on just technical things to help people. And because the schedule was so loaded, they didn't do it. But they're going to have one in the fall. So that's another option.
And if you're interested, I mean, I'm happy to put together this is my router conversation. I think you look in there, you give some tips to get in there and just look around. It's pretty straightforward, right? It's not very complicated, especially if you don't get into some of the more crazy things. That's why I try to keep it to these 3 or 4 concepts. You're fine. You can get into the weeds on subnets and routes traffic and dedicated IPs and all kinds of silliness that really don't need to worry about.
Any last comments? Any last question? If not, thank you very much, Tom, for
My
a
pleasure.
very informative
Thank you for your
sessions.
time.
Thank you.